Hi, I'm Shawna.
And I'm Liz.
Welcome to Getting Bookish, a weekly podcast where we will talk about different book-related topics, let you know what we're reading, and even answer Q&As from you.
Be sure to visit our website, gettingbookish.com, and check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Getting Bookish. If you enjoy our podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe and leave us a rating and review, which helps us to be seen by other book lovers.
With all that said, we hope you'll enjoy Getting Bookish with us.
Enjoy the podcast.
Hi, friends.
Hello.
Happy June. I hope everyone has had a great month. We are getting ready to start what is becoming our favorite podcast of the month.
Yes.
It is our Bookish Brief. And so if this is your first time catching our Bookish Brief, what we do is we go through, we tell you about the books that we finished, the books that we started and read, and then what we're reading right now, and then we choose our pick and skip. So this month should be super fun. I did not read a ton of books, but
Tell them why.
well, because I'm moving. Oh, I'm in a different place than normal.
Yes.
This is like the only clean spot in my entire house right now. So I'm about 5 days away from moving, and so this is where you get me this month, in a very new, interesting location. And then
I really hope that you post pictures when you move in because, okay, guys, she's moving into a dollhouse.
it's so cute.
It is the cutest little, like, I can't even describe it. It looks like a bookish house. That's all I can say. It's so
I love
cute.
that. I am so excited. It's definitely my dream house, and I'm turning the dining room into a library. It's going to be super fun. So I'll definitely post pictures.
Yay.
Yay. Yay! So let's start with the books we finished from the last Bookish Brief that we did. I finished The Colorado Kid by Stephen King. It was a book that I had been wanting to read because I saw the show Haven a few years ago. It was on the Sci-Fi Channel, and it's based on this book. And Stephen King is definitely out of my comfort zone, which was one of my goals this year, to get out of my reading comfort zone. And it was a fun read. It's a short book. It is, they call it like a hard case. It's not true crime because it's not a true story, but it's a fun, quick read, and not in that horror genre, which is where we think of Stephen King. And so it was definitely super fun. I gave it 4 stars. Wow. And I really enjoyed it. It was just a fun book. So what did you finish from the last Bookish Brief?
First of all, Stephen King is nothing that I would expect you to have. So I think that it's really great because you said you were trying to branch out. So that's really branched out. So,
right.
And it's interesting that you enjoyed it. So that's great.
It was he's a phenomenal writer.
He is a great storyteller.
Yes. And so most of his books just aren't something I would normally pick up, but this one was really good.
Well, I just finished one. It was the one that I was reading, and I have it to show you guys. It is Beasts of Extraordinary Circumstance. And I have to correct myself from last week. I believe I said Beasts of Extraordinary Circumstances. So I'm just putting it out there that I realized that I said that, and I was really embarrassed after I realized that because there was no way to fix it. This is by Ruth Emmy Lang.
So is this the one that's
I know what you're going to say, and I have to apologize again. You were going to say about the Harry Potter, right?
Right.
Okay. So the reason I got this book is because, and I can't remember who said it, and I need to remember because I need to go and talk to them. They said it's for people who loved Harry Potter and they want that magical realm to continue. You're an adult now, but you just can't let go of Harry Potter.
Right.
That's nothing what it's like.
Oh, no.
So
That's so disappointing.
It is. And what was really, I had to really separate myself from it because I almost gave it 1 star just because of that. 1 star. Because it's nothing. It's nothing like Harry Potter. So forgive me if you've picked up this book because you heard me say that. but I actually ended up giving it 5 stars because I didn't want to base it off of just that. Because if you're saying it's like Harry Potter, then it's absolutely nothing like it. But I was like, okay, let me separate from that. And it's a really good book. It is a magical and kind of, it's like magical, whimsical book. There's some drama to it. If you like books that are very nature driven and just very in tune to the elements, you will like this book. There's an overall sense of peace and tranquility even amidst the drama. It's magical and fun. It follows the story of Waylon, who is raised by wolves. And he has these kind of magical abilities. He has a pet pig. It's really fun, really cute, definitely different than something else that I would read. Forgive me for even comparing it to Harry Potter.
Well, we'll definitely forgive you because you were just passing along information that you had heard.
I was, but 5 stars for this book. I loved it. I did. So those were the books we finished. What about the books that you have read in the month of June so far?
So in the month of June, like I said, I'm moving, and so I finished 5 books.
Okay.
Which isn't a ton for what I normally read, but it's just been a busy
You're
month.
moving, you have 2 businesses.
I
Like, you do a lot. So I'm impressed that
I
you're
know.
doing anything having to do with books.
Well, because books are the best part.
Yes.
So the first book I finished was Enchantée by Gita Trelease. I got it, I believe, in February from Book of the Month Club.
Mm-hmm.
It is a YA novel told kind of during the French Revolution. It has all these magical elements. So the main character, she has like this magical ability, and she can't, it's illegal. And so she doesn't want to use it. Like, it scares her. She doesn't want to use it, but it kind of comes down to where her family's in like a really tight spot. And so it's use it or be hungry.
Mm-hmm.
And so she starts down this path to like help her family, and then things fall apart. Like, you can see that the characters are teenagers in lots of ways because there's like miscommunication that happens, and it's like, oh, if you would just talk to the other person,
Right?
it would probably be okay. And so because of that, I realize it's a YA book, and so it's not really fair to take a star off for the teenagerness.
Mm-hmm.
But I did take a star off for that because like some of the things were just like, they were kind of eye roll moments for me as an adult, but it was such a great read. And the main character, her name's Camille, which is one of my friend's names. And so I was like, you have to read this book. She has the same name as you. 'Cause I don't know about you, but I love to read a book where the main character or a character has my same name. I'm like, oh, look, it's me in a book.
That's funny because I love Downton Abbey, and the 2 of the main characters are Mary and Cora. And I have a friend whose name is Mary, and her daughter's name is Cora. So every time I hear it, I'm like, look, it's Mary and Cora.
I love it. So the next book I read was Furyborn, and this was another one that I listened to. It's by Claire Legrand, and it was also a 4-star book for me. It's YA fantasy again. Like, if you're doing something stressful, you want to just stay in your comfort zone, I think. And it was a really captivating and very unique story. So there are these people, and they have like these magical abilities, but everybody only has one. Mm-hmm. You can't, it's kind of like Divergent. Like, you pick one, and if you're more than one, don't tell anyone because no one wants to know. You're in trouble now. And so there are these 2 female characters, and the timeline is taking place like centuries apart. And they're both trying to do the right thing for their family. And I love a strong female character that's not like, oh, I'm just going to wait till someone comes and rescues me. And that's definitely not what these girls are doing. They are like, okay, there's this problem. I can solve this problem, which actually sounds very similar to Enchantée, although the stories themselves were completely different. Again, in this book, though, such well-developed characters. And characters are what I'm most critical of when I'm reading. And they're flawed, but in the best ways that makes them feel so real, which was really fun and refreshing. So there's this war going on, and they don't know what's going to happen to them. They don't know if they are good or evil because they have multiple powers. And so they keep questioning themselves. They're like, well, am I the quote, quote, bad guy? Like, should I be concerned? Like, should I be put in jail? And so it's just all like this inner turmoil, which makes the books really fun. But then there's, they're on the run and they're hiding and they don't know who to trust. And so it's just this really exciting story that I finished in like a day and a half.
Oh, wow.
Because I was like, nope, I need to know what's going to happen. I can't wait. So again, I gave that one 4 stars. That's a series, and I'm going to read the next one also. A lot of times with series, I'll read the first one. It's a great book, and I'm not necessarily interested in continuing. Mm-hmm. But this one, where it ended, I can see the series continuing to be exciting. So I'm looking forward to more in the series. And then we come to the book I did not finish this month. So last month, or in another podcast earlier this month, we talked about To Best the Boys by Mary Weber. It has a great cover. And I posted about it on Instagram. I was really excited.
The premise sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's about this girl who's going to go and take part in this game that's dangerous, and she's going to dress up as a boy so that she can earn her way into like a university, because the prize is like a full ride scholarship to the university. And this takes place like the early 1900s. And so the premise sounded amazing, and I was reading it and I was like, it's going to get good. And I got to page 100 and I was like, it's not that long of a book. Like, it's maybe 300 pages, so I was a third of the way in, and nothing had happened.
Oh, no.
Like, it was still the same evening when the story had started. Like, just nothing had happened, and I was like, I'm so bored. And so when I'm choosing to do lots of other things rather than read my book, I'm not enjoying the book.
Yeah.
And so
and you went well past what you usually say. You give it like 50-something pages. You gave it double the time you gave it an extra chance.
I was really hoping. But I was like, wow, nothing is happening. Like, we're meeting like boy after boy that her parents want her to marry. And I'm just like, this is not the description that I read on the jacket cover. This is something else. And so at page 100, I DNF'd the book. I didn't finish. I put it away. I did give it 2 stars because I think the premise sounds amazing. And if you read the whole thing, I'm sure you would get to the part where she's in the game. And that part is probably exciting, but I just couldn't stick with it. So instead of giving it 1 star like I would normally give a book I didn't finish, I did give it 2 stars because I have faith it gets better.
Did you even try to skip or skim?
I didn't.
No.
Like, that's how little I cared about the characters. I was like, I don't even care. Like, I'm going to assume that it has a happy ending, that she
gets her scholarship.
Is successful. Yeah. I just didn't care.
Oh, that's such a terrible feeling.
I know. And I felt bad being like, I just don't care. And now that I'm thinking about it, I believe the last book I read by Mary Weber, I also didn't finish. I'll put it in the podcast notes. I will look it up, and it'll be in the podcast notes. So I'm wondering if just maybe her writing style isn't necessarily my reading style. Yeah. So then the next one I read was The Gilded Wolves. And some of you might be thinking, you read that already. And I did a couple of months ago. I read The Gilded Wolves. I've been raving about it ever since. And a couple of people have been like, that book wasn't that good. And I was like, yes, it was. It was fantastic. I gave it 5 stars. Like, it was such a good book. But after, a couple people tell you, that book was terrible. Like, I started questioning it. And I had put the audiobook on hold at the library a long time ago. And my hold finally, it was my turn. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll listen to it real quick and be a little bit more critical. And so I started listening to it. And it's not that the book wasn't good. The book is amazing. The audio version was terrible.
Oh, no.
And I love audiobooks. I love audiobooks. And it was just poorly done accents.
Oh, no.
And, like, there are good readers and there are just not so good readers. And they had 2 readers because there are 4 main characters, 2 boys, 2 girls, and the chapters like alternate between all of their perspectives. Mm-hmm. And so like there was a boy reading the boy chapters and a girl reading the girl chapters, which is normally something I really like, but none of their voice just wasn't a good fit for the character. Mm-hmm. I don't know. So if you have listened to me rave about this book, The Gilded Wolves, definitely read it. Mm-hmm. Don't listen to it on audio. The audio is definitely a skip. So for me, the audio version was only 2 stars. Okay. It made me not like the book very much. No. I love the book. And so the book is definitely still 5 stars for me, but the audio is absolutely
good to know for our listeners if they're interested in taking on that book. Read it. Don't listen to it.
Yeah, read it. This is not the best audio I've heard before. The last book I read this month is Age of Light, and it's by Whitney Scherer, and it was such a fun read. So this is definitely another one that was outside of my kind of reading comfort zone. It's about Lee Miller, who was a model turned photographer in the early 1900s, kind of when photography was just starting to gain momentum, and like she thought she was going to be like an artist and draw pictures that they were going to print in magazines, and then they told her, they're like, that's kind of passé, like we're all about photography now. And she ended up becoming a really amazing photographer, and the story is historical fiction but based on her life and spending time in this very interesting romantic side of Paris in the early 1900s, where everybody was very free-spirited. It was very much like that flapper culture. And but the story, even though most of it takes place during that time period when she was developing all those photography skills, we get these snippets of later, like toward the end of her life when she's much older, and then when she goes and she's a photographer during World War II. Mm-hmm. And so it's just this very interesting kind of progression from like this flippant girl who arrives in Paris, like with all these dreams in her head and like no money to speak of. But just like that developing over time. And then when she's older, like dealing with all the things that she's experienced, like being a photographer during World War II. Yeah. And it was so poignant, like just like almost heavy at times.
Seems like something I would like.
It really does. And in fact, while I was reading it, I was like, I think Shawna would really enjoy this because it's emotional, but not like, not dramatic, mm-hmm. but just
deep.
Really, it's deep. It's well done. Kind of that development of her, of like the emotional side of this character. I really enjoyed the audio. The reader does a really wonderful job because there's lots of like French accents and things going on. And so she does a really nice job with all of that and kind of changing the tone of the way she reads when she's reading for the different parts of Lee's life. I gave that, again, 4 stars. I was on a 4-star kick this month. But it was one of those books that when you finished it, you didn't want to just start another one because you wanted to just like think about it.
I got one of those.
Bit. Yeah, yes. I'm so excited to hear about it. So, and now it's time because that is the end of my list. And I'm really excited to hear about all the fun things you read this month.
Okay, so I think I read kind of about the same as you did. I have some things going on. I'm not moving, but
But you do have 4 small children.
I do. And they suck away a lot of my minutes during the day. One book that I'm very surprised that I chose, and I actually started reading it and I didn't like it. So I feel like I'm the opposite of you with your Gilded Wolves. I started reading Daisy Jones and the Six.
Okay.
And I didn't like it because it's the format, I think it was. And I just, I couldn't get into it. And I was like, meh. But I wanted to read it because I feel like so many people were talking about it. Not that I want to like bandwagon, but I was like, okay, what the heck is going on with this? So I downloaded it because you had said it was full cast. So I was like, well, let me listen to it. And I'm like, Benjamin Bratt, you know, like Judy Greer. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I think it was 4 stars, yeah. I wouldn't have been able to read it, but listening to it was very enjoyable. I could swear that this was a real band.
Yes.
And that they were pulling archived tapes or, you know, really talking to people who were there. It was such a good insight into what bands in the 70s might have really been going through. And it was kind of dark and sad and lonely in some parts. And it was really interesting. It just felt like I was just listening to somebody's life. And yeah, so I enjoyed that one. That's by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Right, the next book that I read is called The River by Peter Heller. And again, this is another book that I'm just surprised that I read because it's just not something that I would normally read. And it's about 2 young men. I think they're in their early 20s. They go on this adventure. They've been best friends forever. They know all about the outdoors and kayaking. It's their thing, you know, survival. They're like minimalists when it comes to what they're going to bring. And it's just like this epic adventure for them. And it turns very dramatic and very scary. And it's a thriller. And it really does not go as planned. I will just say that. There is some very heartbreaking things that happen. It's very fast-paced, and it's kind of got that feel like if I'm reading it at night, I'm like, is there somebody watching me outside? Like, I need to close the curtains.
Uh-oh.
So he painted a really good picture of that kind of like, you know, I'm not alone here kind of thing.
Oh.
So I thought that was great.
So exciting.
Yeah, that I gave 5 stars. The next one is also 5 stars. This is called The Dead Drink First by Dale Maharaj. This was, you know, on Audible you get the freebies once a month, and they're usually like shorter. And so I chose this one because it had to do with World War II. So the guy telling the story, it was his dad that was in the war. And his friend died and they never found his body. So he's looking for his you know, he's trying to search to see where his body was to see if he could bring it home. It's told a very kind of journalistic interviews, and you hear like archived footage of recordings where he was trying to talk to different people that were there on that day that may have been in that exact explosion that killed him. It is really intense. And I gave it 5 stars because it was so raw and real, and I really appreciated how they how he let the listener know how this war just affected everybody. And to remind everybody that this war took the lives of 80 million people. And I know a lot of times when I'm reading the World War II books, I'm focusing on like, you know, the concentration camps and, you know, 6 million Jewish people died. But if you look at the overall picture, this was an incredible amount of people. And so to find one body out of 80 million, not that 80 million people are, you know, lost out there. I want to say there's 76,000 soldiers still unaccounted for, something like that. Wow. So anyway, I thought it was really great. It was short, so I was able to listen to it in a day, and I enjoyed it as much as you can enjoy, you know. I think there should be a different word for that. Appreciated, maybe. Is the word. Okay, so the next one is, so now I have a DNF book. And you might have to help me with the author because I didn't write that down. It's The Night Circus.
Oh, Aaron Morgenstern.
Okay. Now, I'm going to say the reason why I DNF, I loved it. And I was listening to it on audiobook. I picked it because I thought the cover was fantastic.
Yes.
So I started listening to it, and it was narrated by Jim Dale. So again, another plus. I got probably 30% into it, and I was not connecting to the way he was doing the voices for this particular book. Usually I love him, and I could feel myself drawing away from the book, even though I loved it. So I stopped it because I didn't want to keep going if I wasn't completely like satisfied, and I'm borrowing the book from the library, and I'm just going to read it because it was so fascinating. It was this circus that just appears, but it's like this dark and kind of almost kind of creepy tone to it. And I don't know, like and their apprentices that they take, they don't treat them very well, especially the girl. You know what I'm talking about. So, yes. And they're just they start out as these children apprenticed to these two men because they're eventually going to play a game or something against each other, and they don't know what this game is, and they're just treated like slaves basically. And I didn't get to the point of what the game was or anything like that, but I'm like, I really have to know what happened, so maybe next month I will have finished that. So
I'm excited to hear what you think when you read it. I read it twice before I listened to the audio, and I've read The Night Circus a lot of times. If you went in and looked at in my Goodreads, there would be like a list of my rereads of that book, but I can see what you're saying with the voice, and sometimes it just isn't a good fit. Like, you can be a master at your craft, but
it was just not hitting me in the way that I needed it to be. And it's funny because I went on to Goodreads and I didn't read any of the spoilers, but I saw one review that said, I would give anything to talk to somebody who read this for the first time just so I can enjoy what they had to say about it. And I was like, what an interesting comment to leave. So I want to give that one another shot for sure. The next one I have is 5 stars. I feel like I had a good month. This was Beneath a Scarlet Sky by Mark Sullivan. Oh my goodness. I have wanted to read this for quite some time, and for some reason I just kept putting it off. But I finally read it, and this is another, historical nonfiction, but it's based on true accounts. It's based on a real person who is basically another hero of World War II. There were so many heroes, you know what I mean? Everybody doesn't have to know who you are for you to have been a hero. And there's so much that he did during World War II that was incredible, especially for the age that he was. He was a young man, and he had so many experiences. You're like, how in the world can you have gone through so much in such a short amount of time? I mean, it was thing after thing. And this is totally a story about how the human spirit is so strong. Because when you're reading it and you're like, oh, that would have broke me. Oh, I couldn't have gone on after that. Oh, there's no way I could have faced another day. And yet he kept going. And it's just like a testament to the will to live and survive and keep going. And then, you know, to find out what he did, how the war affected him, what he became afterwards. It was an incredible story, and I just like devoured it. That was another one that I listened to. So that was narrated by Will Dameron, and I loved it. I've never listened to a book narrated by him before, but now I want to check out other ones. But I did see that he also narrated Salt to the Sea by Ruth Sepeti that I also read a while ago. So I kind of want to like listen to that just to hear him read again. He did, obviously he spoke in a regular American accent, but he also did German accent, the German language, and all the names and cities and everything. He also did Italian and Italian accent and Italian language, and it was really, really good. And so I feel like you can either be taken like way out of the story by somebody doing that, or it can make you even more immersed, and he was fantastic. So that was 5 stars. This next one is What I Saw and How I Lied.
Ooh.
This is by Judy Blundell. It's a National Book Award winner.
Okay.
I don't know how. I mean, I don't want to be rude because apparently it won for a particular reason. I would like to know why. This is a YA book, but it felt like it read so much younger, so it bothered me. You had a book like that before too, something about a circus?
Yes. I don't remember what the name of it was.
Yeah.
But it was like a tightrope walker. Yeah.
Yeah, there was only one scene in here that I could feel like it would make it amped up to a YA novel. The rest of it was very like middle grade, and it was very predictable. It felt superficial. I was bored and I didn't care. And this is a book, this is a book of what happened after World War II. So I thought, you know, I'll love it. Yeah. I learned nothing. Like, I really learned nothing. It was very slow moving, like I said, predictable. So that I gave, what did I give it? Why did I give it 2 stars? I don't know. I think I was just being nice.
Finished it?
I did finish it. It's a little book. I did finish it. Okay, moving on. Oh, another DNF. This one, I feel, is very controversial. So this one that I DNF'd, let me get the author here. Okay, is Where the Crawdads Sing by, is it Delia Owens or Delia? Delia, maybe Delia Owens. I feel like I'm the only one in the world. This is one of Reese Witherspoon's book club, you know, not that that means it's going to be phenomenal, but everybody is raving about this book. And I'll give you a little backstory here. I started this book May 10th. We're now at the end of June. I have started this book 7 times now.
Oh my goodness.
And by this last time I made it to chapter 12. And I just couldn't keep going. I was so incredibly bored. And it was one of those where it was like, I have to read my book. And again, I didn't care, which makes me feel terrible because it starts out about this poor little 5-year-old girl who's left to fend for herself, and she has to, you know, navigate life, and she's a little child. But you know what I think? It went back and forth between, I thought her story was somewhat interesting, but it had like a parallel story that was happening in the future about a murder that took place. And eventually I'm sure the two will come together. That story, very boring. And it was these 2 deputies that just kind of go back and forth to each other. And I'm like, I don't care. So finally I was like, I need to end this. It needs to be finished. And I'm done with it. Moving on. So I am so sorry, guys. I even put it on our Facebook page. Remember, I was like, should I keep going? And everybody said yes.
Right. Well, and I remember seeing everyone's feedback like, oh, you have to keep reading. But I think that this always happens to me with a book that's really, really popular.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to read it. Everyone has read it. Everyone has loved it. I'm going to read this book.
Mm-hmm.
And then I start to read it, and I'm like, I don't like it. And it's so hard to have an unpopular opinion.
It is.
When people who don't even read are reading a book.
Yes. Yeah.
You're like, this isn't that good. Like,
that's how I felt. And I'm like, it just needs to be over. So it's over.
Well, I'm proud of you.
I know I had 2 DNFs this month, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But Night Circus I'm coming back to, so right, count that. The final book. The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. 5 stars. I need more stars. I need all the stars in the entire world to fall upon this book so I can give it 5 billion stars. This story is basically the story of finding one's strength even when it seems everything is against you. It's so fantastic. It takes place in the beautiful state of Alaska. She is phenomenal at describing Alaska and the way of life there. And it's a very, oh man, it gets down to the like hardcore sadness of how you could be doing something that you know is so bad for you. And by saying that, I mean being with somebody and loving them so much that it's killing you, basically. And this story, it was like layer and layer and layer. And just when I thought it couldn't get any like more dramatic and emotional, it did. And I'm like, there's still 100 pages left. Like, what in the world could happen? And it was so fantastic. And so I was very impressed with Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I'm very impressed with Great Alone. I want to keep reading her books because I love her writing style. So I feel like I found an author that, I mean, I loved all these other books and everything, but I love her writing style. It's so easy for me to read, and it's like right in the pocket of how I read. And so then when I read a book like this, it makes me not feel bad that I DNF'd Crawdads. Because this is how a book should make you feel. Maybe not this particular book for you or anybody else, but it should make you feel like you don't want to put it down. You will lock yourself away from friends and family and work and the world to finish it. And you can't let it go until you're done. And so that's how books should make you feel, you know?
Yes.
When you're questioning, should I keep reading or not, you know? So that is my final book that I read. Now let's go to our picks and skips of the month. Liz, what was the favorite book that you had this month? Let's hear it.
I think my favorite book I read this month. Ooh, that's such a hard. It's always a hard question. Mm-hmm. It's always a hard question to say this was my favorite. Because I had multiple books that I gave 4 stars to. So there wasn't one that was like, oh, this is like my 5-star book. But I think the one that I enjoyed the most, and definitely the one that I will recommend the most, was Enchante. Okay. I think that it just had an easy to read plot, and it had great characters, and it was just a well done book. And I'm really enjoying books that take place in France during the Revolution now, which is also when The Gilded Wolves takes place. That's the same time period. Yeah. So yeah, I think that is my pick of the month.
And what is your skip?
Well, my skip of the month has to be To Best the Boys. Because I didn't finish it, but also because if nothing happens in a book in 100 pages, there's something wrong there. And I'm not always, like, hugely into plot. Like, plot does not make or break a book for me normally. I like the characters, but I also didn't care about those characters. Yeah. So so it was not my favorite book this month. So To Best the Boys is my skip of the month. However, I would like to say that The Gilded Wolves on audio should also be skipped. But not the whole book, just the audio part. Yeah. So what are yours?
So my best book of the month, it was really hard for me to pick between The Great Alone and Beneath a Scarlet Sky. It was really, really hard because I almost wish I didn't read those two in the same month, because they're both so amazing and they are going on my favorites list easily.
Yeah.
Might be surprising, but as much as I just loved and cried and all the feels with The Great Alone, I'm going to have to go with Beneath a Scarlet Sky. Only because, as wonderful as they both are, because Beneath a Scarlet Sky has the true story behind it, I have to go with that one. Because his story is like otherworldly in this book. And because somebody actually went through those things that he went through, I have to give it to that one, which like kind of hurts me inside because I just loved The Great Alone. But anyway, that gave it just that extra nudge. But they are both up there as phenomenal books. The worst one I'm going to say for this month, even though I DNF'd Crawdads, I feel like so many people love it that it just was not for me, but apparently the entire world loves it. So I'm actually going to go with What I Saw and How I Lied. I wouldn't recommend this to anybody. Okay, so now that we've done our picks and skips, let's talk quickly about what we are currently reading and what we'll take into the next month with us.
So I am currently reading a book that you read last month, Romanov.
Yay!
Yay! I'm so excited for us to get to discuss it.
Yes.
As soon as I finish it. So that is by Nadine Brandes, and it is an alternate history of the Romanov family and Anastasia, and it has all these magical elements. So I'm about a third of the way into it. It's really exciting so far. So I'm really looking forward to finishing that one. And then I am just starting. This is going to be a surprise again.
Okay.
I am just starting on audio The Outsider by Stephen King.
Oh.
Which I believe is horror. We'll see how this goes. I'm very sensitive. We'll see if I have nightmares. So that is what I am reading right now. Now, I know you just finished The Great Alone, but have you started something new?
Yeah, I literally just finished The Great Alone, like hours ago. So I was going to try to find a book really quick, and I was going through a whole bunch of different ones, but I just haven't picked one out yet. But I am listening to a book on audio that is The Housekeeper's Tale, The Women Who Really Ran the English Country House by Tessa Bose. And I read that, I'm listening to that because, again, I love Downton Abbey and everything having to do with it. And these are real stories from the women who ran those houses, because we all know that the families didn't run the houses. The housekeeper, the maids, the butlers, the valets, the footmen, all those people are what made the house actually run. And so it gives 5 different accounts, and they found these journals from these women from, the 1800s and the 1900s. And it's just little snippets. And I thought one of the most interesting stories was they were talking about a housekeeper by the name of Sarah Wells, and that she was like a terrible housekeeper and like one of the worst ones ever. And she had a son whose name is H.G. Wells, who is very well known for The War of the Worlds, Time Machine, The Island of Dr. Moreau, among others. And so I thought that was so interesting. Yeah, so I'm listening to that one. So we'll see what I pick for my reading book. And I don't know. There's so many choices.
Yes.
So many.
Well, I know you'll update us next month.
Yes, absolutely.
During the July Bookish Brief.
Yes. All right, so that is it for us. And thank you for listening. And we will be back next week with another topic.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed hanging out with us.
Don't forget to check us out on social media and subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on any of the fun.
See you next week.